Today, the Israeli Air Force is marking 35 years since the destruction of the Iraqi nuclear reactor in a surprise airstrike during a secret operation called Opera. One of the young pilots who was on this legendary flight is a former IDF intelligence chief, and today is the head of Israel's most prestigious think tank. Amos Yadlin sat down with ILTV to tell us more about this historical flight and the challenges Israel faced and is still facing today.
Thank you so much for being with us. So the first question is, what were the main challenges in this operation?
There were basically 4 challenges. First was intelligence. At that time, Israel didn't have satellites. And to reach Baghdad by reconnaissance airplane was almost impossible. So to get the exact intelligence on the facility itself from the outside and from the inside was a real challenge. The second challenge was the issue of the opposition. The air defense of the Iraqis, the AAA of the Iraqis, the MiGs that protected Baghdad. Remember, this is the capital of Iraq at the time of war with Iran. So very heavy air defense and opposition. The third challenge was fuel. We didn't have a refueling capability at that time. And anyway, refueling on the way was impossible because it was an enemy territory, whether Jordan or Saudi. So going to Baghdad and coming back was a profile that left us with very little amount of fuel. The last challenge has to do with how you arrange 8 airplanes to bomb a nuclear reactor basically in the shortest time to avoid the air defense, and making sure that at least 8 bombs will reach and will explode in the reactor to make sure that it will be destroyed.
You got some unexpected help. Can you tell us?
Yeah, when Israel started to think about the need to destroy this nuclear reactor, the only operational airplanes that were available were F-4 Phantoms and A-4 Skyhawks. And both of them should be refueled in the air, which was in a way making the mission without the capability to surprise the enemy. And the surprise was so important. So then in 1979, there was a revolution in Iran. The Iranians signed an agreement to have F-16 delivered from the US. The new regime was hostile to America, and suddenly there were in Fort Worth, Texas, 55 airplanes that should go to Iran, and Israel was offered to receive them. So we were able to receive our F-15 a year ahead of the schedule planned. And in a way, the Iranians gave us F-16 to take care of the nuclear reactor. By the way, the same Iranians attacked this nuclear reactor in January 1981. And their attack was not successful. They did it with F-4, they strafed, they didn't achieve anything. What they have achieved is the awareness of the Iraqis. So the result here was a negative contribution from Iran. They gave the Iraqis the awareness that this nuclear reactor can be a target, should be defended much heavier.
The mission was postponed in the last minute. What happened?
The mission should have flown in the Independence Day of 1981. And we were briefed, taxi already reached the runways, and then the cancellation order arrived. From what I know in hindsight is that there was a leak about the operation. The leak arrived to the head of the opposition at that time, later on President Shimon Peres. He picked the phone, spoke with Prime Minister Begin, tried to stop the launching of the mission, promising him that in 2 weeks President Mitterrand will be elected in France and he is his friend, and he will stop sending the reactor to Iraq. Begin was very worried that if it's leaked to Shimon Peres, it may have leaked to the Americans, maybe to the Iraqis. So he decided to call off the mission. Later on, when Mitterrand was elected and did nothing to stop the reactor, we were launched again.
Can you tell us about the briefing from Chief of Staff, Rafael Eitan?
Yes, Rafael Eitan was the Chief of Staff, and he came to the briefing. And in the Israeli Air Force culture, every pilot can raise his hand and ask tough questions about everything, about the mission, about the justification for the mission. At that time, it seems like a very dangerous mission, that maybe 1, 2, 3 of us will never come back. And the question was what we will be achieving. Whether a delay in 2 years justifying the sacrifice. And the idea of delaying only 2 years was up to the thinking that Iraq will have the money to buy another reactor. The French will sell reactor to anybody who gives them $1 billion, and maybe their motivation will be even higher. But the Chief of Staff gave a speech which was very impressive speech, basically telling us the difference between theory and practice. Say in theory they can have the reactor rebuilt in 2-3 years. In practice it will take them at least 5 years, because until they will decide, and maybe the French will not give them a reactor immediately. So for 5 years you can sacrifice your life. By now we are very close to the 35 years.
So the mission was finally launched. How did it go?
You know, there is a Murphy law that's saying that everything that can go wrong will go wrong. In this mission, Murphy was not there. Almost everything was worked as planned and maybe even better. The fuel consumption was lower than we expected. The MiGs were not scrambled against us. We found the reactor quite easily because it was a big and very clear target. There were some mistakes that were done by some of the pilots. There was a mistake in calculating the light, because the sun set in Iraq an hour before us. We never did such a long flight. So it was a little bit dark when we came there, but at the end of the day, the reactor was destroyed and everybody come back home safely, and this is much more than we expected.
Was there one person more responsible for the success of the mission than others?
You know, usually you devote the success to the pilot, to the brave pilot, and our leader, Lieutenant Colonel at that time, Raz, who was the squadron commander, even got a decoration. And this is right because he led the operation in a very professional way. But I think the real hero of this flight is not the pilot, it's the decision maker. And the Prime Minister, late Menachem Begin, his decision to launch this unique and historical sortie is a very brave decision. And in a historical perspective, he deserves all the credit.
How did you feel when the world, including the United States, condemned Israel?
You know, we are used to it. And if we do something that we feel that is right and protecting the Jewish people, we will listen to the criticism. And to tell you the truth, we even had a regret from the war, especially from the Americans. In 1991, 10 years later, when the Americans went to the first Gulf War and they found Iraq without nuclear weapon, they sent, the defense secretary was Mr. Cheney. He sent a picture of this reactor to General Ivry, who was at the time of the attack the Air Force commander, and told him, thank you for taking the nuclear option from Iraq, which make our war much safer and successful.
And finally, as a former general and head of Israel's most prestigious think tank, how do you view the challenges Israel faces today?
Israel has many challenges, and the first one is still Iran. The rest of the world is concerning about the Islamic State. For Israel, the Islamic Republic of Iran is our main enemy, and their proxy Hezbollah is the most challenging military threat to Israel. So we still, after the deal, looking at Iran to see whether it's keeping the deal and prepare ourselves 10 years from now when the deal allowed Iran to have an unlimited, legitimate nuclear program with a zero distance from the bomb. This is a huge defense challenge for Israel.